What's going on? I'm the Ink Talker, and today we're going to be discussing Overlord, which in my opinion is one very underrated series. We're going to be recapping season 1, well 1 through 3, because season 4 is about to come out, and I'm going to be going over the differences that's in the light novels. But first, I got something, at the time of this recording, I got something in the mail that I want to show y'all. So let me get my scissors and cut this open. I got these from a guy in Dallas when I went, and I'm gonna put his Instagram in the description. But he does. I normally don't buy. Go back here. I normally don't buy art. I just thought that was super cool. Got Ichigo and Goblin Slayer, two of my favorite, probably my top favorites of all times. So, with that being said, let's start the recap of Overlord Season 1, and then let's get into the light novel. Yggdrasil, a DMMO RPG, is getting shut down after 12 years. Momonga, the leader of the guild Ainzul-Gon, is the last member and is planning to stay till the servers are shut down. He grabs the guild's treasured item, the staff of Ainzul-Gon, and makes his way to the throne room with some of the NPCs of the guild. As he thinks he's going to be logged out, he closes his eyes as the time reaches 12 a.m. The clock continues and he is confused, thinking that maybe the devs have pushed back the shutdown. Then he hears a voice. It comes from one of the NPCs, Albedo, the Guardian Overseer, asking him if everything's okay. Momonga's confused as the NPCs shouldn't be acting of their own and they definitely shouldn't be talking. Momonga tries to use the game commands, but they don't work. Trying to figure out what's going on, Momonga commands Sebas, leader of the Pleiades, to go outside and check the surrounding areas. Then tells Albedo to gather all the floor guardians except for the 4th and 8th floor, and tell them to meet him on the 6th floor at the amphitheater in an hour. Momonga meets with Aura and Mare, the 6th floor guardians. He wants to test and see if he can still use magic. He figures out he can, and he summons a fire elemental, which Aura and Mare fight. Now he tries to see if he can use message to contact the game devs or one of his friends, but instead is able to get a hold of Sebas, who tells him that the Great Tomb of Nazarick is surrounded by grasslands. All the floor guardians show up and swear their loyalty to Momonga. Then he asks Mare if there's a way that they can hide the tomb. He says it can be done by covering it with dirt to make it look like a hill. Momonga says get it done, and then he teleports away. Later, he's in a weapon storage room and uses a magic item to don some armor and wield a sword. The item let him change his class so he could be a warrior. After, he wants to try to get some alone time, so he tries to go outside alone, but Demiurge insists that Momonga allows him to follow. They go outside, Momonga uses a fly talisman, and he soars into the sky and is graced with a beautiful night sky. Momonga and Demiurge talk. Momonga jokingly talks about how taking over this world would be interesting. Then below, they see the earth start to move and see Mare start to hide the tomb. As a reward, he gives Mare a ring of Ainzul-Gon, which will allow the wearer to teleport anywhere in the tomb. Albedo shows up, and Momonga gives her one as well because she freaks out that Mare has one. Elsewhere, we meet Negan of the Slain Theocracy. He's talking to his men and he orders them to start attacking a village. Also, we meet Gazef Stronov, the strongest warrior in the Riestes kingdom. He and his men are helping villages that have been ransacked by the recent attacks. Back at Nazarick, Momonga and Sebas are watching a village get attacked by some knights. At first, Momonga says just to let them be, but changes his mind after he sees how Sebas answers him. He is reminded of how an old guildmate, Touch Me, saved him when he started playing Yggdrasil. Momonga tells Sebas to tell Albedo to get ready and meet him at the village. He opens a gate and arrives just as two knights are about to kill these two girls. He uses Grasp Hard on one and Lightning on the other. Then, he summons a Death Knight and tells it to kill all the knights in the village, and then it just runs off. Albedo shows up dressed in full plate armor. Momonga tells the girls that his name is Ainzul-Gon and gives the older girl, Enri, a potion and 2 goblin horns that'll summon a group of goblins. Also, he he asks if they know of magic. Enri says that they know about magic and that one of her friends is an herbalist and he uses magic. Momonga tells her and her sister to stay put and cast 2 protective magic spells on them, and then Momonga and Albedo make their way to the village where the Death Knight has killed most of the knights. He lets some of them flee, and Momonga tells the village that his name is Ainzul Gon, and now the village is under his protection. He talks to the village chief and learns about the area and the currency. There are 3 powers in the surrounding area: the Kingdom of Riestas, the Baharuth Empire, and the Slain Theocracy. Momonga learns that Yggdrasil money doesn't translate, but the gold itself is worth something. He also learns about the Adventurers Guild. Gazif and men show up to the village, and he meets Momonga, which introduces himself as Ainzul Gon. After Gazif is informed about the situation, one of Gazif's men tells him that the village has been surrounded by some unknown figures. They are the Sunlight Scripture of the Slain Theocracy. Before Gazif leaves for battle, Momonga gives him an item and says he will protect the village. Gazif and men go off to fight. Just before they are killed, they are teleported back to the village, and the item that Momonga has given Gazif disappears. Momonga confronts and easily destroys the Sunlight Scripture. During the fight, Momonga learns that Yggdrasil magic and items exist in this world. Back at the village, he watches them mourn their dead. He could bring them back to life, but think it could be a hassle if he does, so him and Albedo go back to Nazarick. This is where Momonga officially changes his name and wants to be referred to now as Ainzul Gon. Shalltear comes to tell Ainz goodbye since her and Sebas are leaving for their mission. After, Ainz dresses as a warrior is accompanied by Nabaril Gamma, and they go to the city of Irantel. They go to an inn after registering as adventurers. They end up getting into a confrontation with the group and end up breaking a girl named Britta's potion. He gives her a red potion in exchange, which in this world, the potions are usually blue. Ainz and Nabaril go up to their rooms, and Ainz tells her that while being an adventurer here, he will go by the name Momon and she will go by Nabe. They are there to get info and become famous adventurers. Meanwhile, Britta takes the potion to a famous herbalist, Lizzie. She appraises it and says that this is a very rare potion. Then, she tells her grandson, Inferia, to find the person that gave Britta this potion. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Ainz and Nabe go to sign up for a quest, but neither of them can read the language. Ainz just grabs a random quest, and the clerk says that they can't do that one because it's for a mithril level adventurer or higher, and they are only a copper. This is when the group Swords of Darkness tells Ainz that they can join their group, seeing as they're about to head out on a job. The Swords of Darkness consist of Peter, Nina, Lacroute, and Dine. They introduce themselves, and the only thing of note that Ainz learns is about talents. Talents are somewhat rare, and that 1 in 200 people are born with, which gives him a special skill. Nina's talent is that he can learn magic faster than normal people. They also tell Ainz about another talent holder, Inferia. His talent is that he can use any equipment or magical item without restriction. Just as they're about to set out, the clerk from earlier tells Ainz that someone has requested him by name. It just so happens to be Inferia. At first, Ainz says he can't do it due to him already accepting to go out with another group, but after talking, Ainz and the Swords of Darkness go to help Inferia with his request and they head out. Meanwhile, later that night at the Irantel cemetery, a woman named Clementine goes to see Kaji. She shows him the Crown of Wisdom and asks for his help in finding someone that can wear it. Kaji agrees after Clementine tells him that she will help him with his ritual. The next day, the group starts to make their way to Karn village. Along the way, Nabe accidentally lets Albedo's name slip, but Ainz tells her not to worry about it. Also, Ainz learns about the Wise King of the Forest and is intrigued. Then, they run into a group of goblins and orcs. Ainz impresses the group by cleaving all the orcs in one swing of his sword. After, the group rests for the night. That night, in the city, Clementine is killing and interrogating people trying to find out about Inferia. This is when you find out about Kaji's plan to turn the city of Irantel into a city of undead. The next day, as they close in on Karn village, they see a wooden wall built around it. They get surrounded by a troop of goblins. The goblins turn out to be friendly and under the leadership of Enri, the girl that Ainz gave the goblin horns to. Enri and Inferia talk, and Inferia figures out that Momon is Ainz, and he confronts him. Inferia tells Ainz that he will not say anything, and the real reason that he requested him is to learn how to make the potion he gave Britta. After, the group goes into the forest. Inferia tells Ainz that if they run into the Wise King to not kill it, as the reason why monsters don't attack a village is because of the Wise King. Ein suggests him and Nabe go into the forest to first scout it out, and the group agrees. The two go in, and they meet up with Aura, who lures out the Wise King for Ainz. The Wise King starts to go after Ainz, and it turns out that it resembles a hamster. Ainz tames the hamster, and the group can't believe it, but they're done harvesting and they make their way back to the city. While Ainz goes and registers the hamster with the guild, the Swords of Darkness and Inferior go back to the shop, and there, Clementine is waiting for him. The Swords of Darkness go to defend Inferior and tell him and Nina to flee, but Kaji is blocking the exit. Meanwhile, after registering the hamster, now named Hamsky, he meets Lizzie and they make their way to the shop. When they get there, Ainz can tell something is off. They find that the Sword of Darkness has been killed and turned into zombies. Ainz finds that Nina has been tortured to death. Also, he finds out that Nina was actually a girl. Lizzie hires Ainz and Nabe to rescue Inferior. They use multiple scrolls to figure out that Inferior is in the cemetery. The two get to the cemetery and start taking out countless undead. They finally get to where Kaji is, and Ainz tells Nabe to deal with Kaji while he goes and takes out Clementine. After somewhat struggling due to Ainz telling her not to use her full power, she kills Kaji and his two skeletal dragons. Ainz kills Clementine and saves Inferior, and restores his eyesight. Ainz and Nabe are now promoted to Mithril class adventurers. After all is finished, Ainz gets a call from Albedo saying that she thinks Shalltear has betrayed them. Sebas and Solution are executing the mission that Ainz assigned to them. They have a guy named Zach who sells them out to a mercenary group that is going to ambush them. As they get on the road, Shalltear is with them, and they get stopped by the mercenary group. Shalltear orders her minions to kill the ambushers. After, Sebas and Solution move on, while Shalltear goes to the mercenary base. This is where she meets Brain Unglaus. Brain runs away after Shalltear shows him that there's no possible way he can win against her. She transforms into her true vampire form and slaughters everybody in the base looking for Brain, but he escapes through a back exit. A group of adventurers are back at the entrance. She kills all but Britta, which was a part of the group, when Britta throws the potion that Ainz gave her at Shalltear. Shalltear realizes that the potion was from Ainz and tells her minions to capture her. She uses mind control, and Britta tells Shalltear, confirming that she got the potion from Ainz. She spares Britta, not knowing if she's a part of Ainz's plan or not. Britta also tells Shalltear that there was an adventurer that was sent back to Irantel. Shalltear goes to track the adventurer and runs into the black scripture of the slain theocracy. An old lady starts to cast a spell, and before completing it, Shalltear shoots off an attack, killing the old lady as well as the person in front of her before she succumbs to the mind control. Back at Nazarick, Ainz suspects that Shalltear could be under some kind of mind control not found in Yggdrasil. Ainz locates Shalltear and is contacted by Nabe. She says that the Adventurers Guild is aware of Shalltear and wants his help. He goes to Irantel and talks to the Guildmaster as well as some other adventurers. Ainz says that he's been hunting this vampire, and he brings out a crystal that he says has 8th tier magic in it. They don't believe him, but the Guildmaster asks Ainz what he wants, and he says he wants to be made into an Orichalcum rank. One of the adventurers don't agree and says he's going with Ainz. That adventurer ends up being killed by Mare and brought back to Nazarick. Ainz and Albedo go to where Shalltear is, and he uses his ring Shooting Star to try and undo the spell on Shalltear, but it fails, and Ainz panically retreats. Ainz tells Albedo that Shooting Star didn't have any effect, and the only thing that could do that is a world-class item. Ainz, Albedo, and Yuri Alpha go to the treasury, and this is where they meet Pandora's Actor, which is the NPC that Ainz created. They go into the mausoleum to retrieve some world-class items. Ainz tells Albedo that he's going to fight Shalltear alone, and she begrudgingly accepts. Now Ainz, Aura, and Mare go to where Shalltear is. The twins are equipped with their own world-class items. Aura has Depiction of Nature and Society, which allows the user to isolate space, while Mare is equipped with Greed and Generosity, which allows the user to absorb XP and which can be used at a later time. Ainz prepares to fight Shalltear by using enchantments, and he puts some items in his belt as well as sets a timer. Now he's ready to fight Shalltear. After lowering her HP to the level that he needs, his timer goes off. He uses super tier spell Fallen Down and beats Shalltear. Ainz goes back to Nazarick and resurrects Shalltear. She comes back and isn't under mind control anymore and doesn't remember anything that's happened. Now, in the Slain Theocracy, a knight is reporting to 6 people about the vampire that his group has run into. Per the agreement between Ainz and Lizzie, her and Neferia move to Karn Village and meet up with Lupe Regina Beta, which is going to be looking after them. In the capital, Riestes, Cetus and Solution have taken residence, and Gazif runs into Brain in an alley. The adventurers Momon and Nabe have been promoted to Adamantite class. Lastly, Ainz orders the activation of Gargantua and calls her victim as well. Alright, let's hop into the light novel because there is a lot of information to go over in terms of like differences, in terms of how much information they actually put in the light novel. Season 1 covers volumes 1, 2, and 3. And so, like, I might be jumping around all over the place, but there's like a lot of stuff that I found interesting. I don't know about you, but I find lore itself very interesting in terms of anything, if I can find more information about anything I'm watching or a video game I'm playing. So let's see, I have a whole list of things right here on my computer. The game Yggdrasil itself has over 2,000 basic and advanced job classes with a max level of 15 per class. So in order to level up to 100, you need at least 7 classes. And I think that's it. Ainz said that Ainz had 60 different classes. I don't know if they're maxed out, but 60 different classes itself. Also, in Yggdrasil, there's over 6,000 spells. 6,000. I can't even think of a game in real life that has a tenth of that. Like, I don't even think WoW or Final Fantasy XIV has something like that. Like, imagine if you were playing that and they have 7,000 spells. Ainz can use 700 of those, over 700, and they say a normal 100 player can only use around 300. So he's like the top, well, not the top, but a top tier magic caster. Next, when I first watched Overlord, I thought that this guild, Guild Ainz Ooal Gown was like the best, like #1 in the entire game. Turns out they're not. They were ranked 9th out of the entire game, which is the highest they ever ranked, and the lowest they ever got to was 48th. I can't read, I'm dyslexic. 48th is the lowest, and at the time of the last day of the game, they were ranked number 29th, only because Ainz put so much work into maintaining the guild. It also goes into they were so hated, the guild itself was so hated that once 8 other guilds got 1,500 people, NPCs, actual players, like, to attack the guild, and they were able to make it, I think, to the 7th or 8th floor. So, like, you know, I thought they were like the best. I thought Ainz was also like the strongest dude in the entire guild. Turns out he's not, but I'll get to that in a second. In terms of the build of the guild, we all know it has 10 floors, and so floors 1 through 3 are modeled after a normal tomb. Floor 4 was an underground lake. Floor 5, a frozen glacier. Floor 6 is a rainforest, which is weird because it has the amphitheater, but okay, I guess so. Floor 7 was a sea of magma. Floor 8 was a wasteland, and floors 9 and 10 was the home base of the guild. And because, so like it also goes into how the NPCs were so high leveled is because if you got to a castle grade guild, you were able to, the game allocated 700 levels for you to create NPCs to, you know, whatever levels you wanted. It said you could have, you know, 10, do math. You can have, what, you know, 6 level 100 characters and 4 level 25 characters, you know, that works for the guild. And that's how they had so many powerful NPCs in there. Okay, next. Let's say when on the 6th floor, when Ainz is talking to the twins, he remembers that during that 8 guild battle, the twins have died, and he's wondering in this new world if they remember that or not, but he doesn't want to, like, you know, freak them out or like, you know, bring up past trauma, I guess. So he was like, he ended up not asking him. And also when he's talking to Aura, her breath, she lets out a breath ability in front of him. And so he wants to test and see if it works. So he summons these wolves, and it turns out that while it affects them, it doesn't affect him, but like his special classes allow him to not be affected by mind affecting effects. So it didn't work on him in essence anyway. Okay. Now to like the most confusing thing that I am not able to still fully wrap my head around. The power levels of each character in this show. Or, you know, each in this series, like the entire power scale, how strong each person is. It said in the light novel, in terms of melee combat, Cocytus is the strongest when wielding a weapon. Albedo has the best defense when in her full plate armor, and Sebas, in his true form, is stronger than both of them in melee combat. Now I know it doesn't say he's the strongest of all, but it you know, because they say Shalltear is the strongest guardian. Also, later on, it says when Aura uses her beast, because she's a beast hunter, it says when she uses her beast, her combat abilities far exceed any other guardians. So they're all dumb strong, but like there's no definitive like this person is the. I mean, like Shalltear, I guess, is the only person that like this is the strongest person in the entire whatever. So okay. Next is what I thought was super funny, is when he summons a Death Knight, he thought that once he summoned it, even though he told it to dip and go kill all those knights, he's like, man, I didn't even think it was going to run off, and he thought I was going to stay with him and defend him, and he's just like, okay, I need to be more careful about how I, you know, tell these things to roam around and stuff. So I just thought that was pretty funny that he's just like, oh, I can imagine if they made that, and he's just like, I can't believe this dude just ran off. Also, while in Karn Village, he asks them how much they can pay him, and they give him an amount of like 3,000 coppers, because the village doesn't use gold. They only use silver and copper pieces. And when they weigh the gold that Ainz has from Yggdrasil, it weighs 2 times the amount of 1 gold piece. So they say it's worth about 2 times the amount of gold. Okay, and let's see what's next. Okay, this is something that I've tried to look up more, but unless you go further in the light novel, which I'm only doing 1 through 3. So after killing Clementine, Nabe gives the orb that Kaji has. Nabe gives to Ainz, and when he holds it, he feels an energy coming off it, and he appraises it, and is like, oh, this is a intelligent magic item. And so when it talks to him, and was like, oh, I want to serve you, and stuff like this. And so he ends up giving it to Hamsky to hold on to. So I can't wait to listen to more of the light novel to see what's going on. I was like, if you haven't checked it out, the light novel, I would highly recommend it. The art is amazing. I don't know if you've seen the art for it, but the art itself, all the like character designs and all that look awesome. Okay, and this next, probably the only difference that I wish was in the anime is when they're looking for Shalltear, they end up going to the 5th floor to the frozen prison that's in there, and this is where they keep all of Nazarick's enemies. And so in the light novel, it brings up that Albedo has 2 sisters. She has an older sister and a younger sister, and the older sister is locked up in this prison. I don't remember if it goes into why she's locked up in there, but she's in there. So they go in there, and Ainz grabs a baby because I guess, I don't remember, the guy that created her, the supreme being that created her, liked horror stuff, so he ended up creating her, and she, I guess, lost a baby. So he gives her a baby for her to calm down because he's about to go stab him with a pair of scissors. And so she's described, her name is Negretto, and she's described as this. Her body and hair resemble Albedo's, except for her hair covers her face, so she can't see it. But it says, with the exception that her hair covering her face, her true face was creepy, to say the least. It had no skin, No skin, only exposed muscle. Her mouth had no lips, yet held a beautiful set of eyes. No, it said her mouth had no lips, yet held a beautiful set of teeth. Her eyes shone brightly through the absence of eyelids. An observer might think that her beauty, if they were looking solely at her eyes or her teeth, but as a whole, her face inspired nothing but revulsion, which, creepy. They came to see her because she specializes in divination magic, and so she was able to find she was able to find Shalltear, and this is when Momon leaves, or Ainz gets a call from Nabe to go talk to the guild. And so before Albedo leaves, they start to chat, which Albedo is actually like super chill around her older sister. I don't know if that's because she's crazy or what, but so Negredo asks about their younger sister, Robedo, which I haven't made it that far in the light novel, so she hasn't come up in terms of like actually talking about her, but she calls her Spinel and says that she's deceiving everybody and that she's going to bring great disaster to Nazarick. Albedo, why she doesn't really believe her, she's like, I'll take your words into consideration. And while speaking of the youngest sister, while it hasn't been brought up in 1 through 3, they say that her Robedo, the youngest sister, is the strongest entity in all of Nazarick. Like, she can beat Ainz, she can beat, it says even with Touch Me in his full plate arm, like in his full set gear, like he wouldn't stand a chance. She's the strongest one in the entire guild, or in all of Nazarick. So that's why it's confusing to say who's like the strongest of all of everybody. Okay. Something else, like when Ainz goes to the guild, or when he goes back to Erentel to talk to the guild master, there's 2 more people that are there. The mayor and the magic guild master. And the only reason why I say is because when he pulls out the 8th tier item, the magician's guild guy says, he confirms the authenticity, and then he also picks it up and licks it all over, even mashing it into his face. So, I guess he likes it that much, but, And then later on, when they're asking why they didn't bring Clementine and Khajiit's body back, Ainz didn't know that somebody else could use resurrection magic. Like, he can bring people back to life, but he didn't think other people could be brought back to life yet, so he kind of was just like, ugh. And so, I think they're going to try to go get them back. Now, to the Shalltear fight. Before he fought Shalltear, when he tried to get all the effects off her, he used Wish Upon a Star. And in the light novel, he finds out, well, it gives you the information that he finds out that the Wish Upon a Star, it works as the name suggests, so like wishing upon a star, and he thought that he could use it to steal Inferior. He could steal Inferior's talent, and he knew, like, now he knows he could have done that, but too late. Okay, in the treasury. Now in the treasury it goes into, he brings Delta along with him because her backstory is written so that she knows the hints to the passwords of all the doors in Nazarick. So that's why he brought her, but he wanted to try to figure out on his own. Then when he's talking to Pandora's actor, he wants to know how many world-class items he knows about. There's 200 in all of Yggdrasil, but he only knows about the 11 that they have. So yeah, that's it. And then also he asks if he can leave the treasury. So he gives him a ring of Ainz and tells him, until Albedo tells everybody else, he can only go to the 9th and 10th floor, but after that he has free reign of Nazarick, and he can go wherever he wants. It also talks about world-class items called the 20, which were literal game breakers. Like, if this was in WoW or in Final Fantasy XIV, like, literally would break the game. One of them, because I'm not going to go into every single one, it said one could have the Yggdrasil devs change part of the magic system in the game. And Ainz had 2 of these, and they were one-use items. Like, imagine if you could, in WoW or Final Fantasy, be like, hey, we want to change this, and they just completely change the entire game. That's crazy. Like, I wish this was a real game. I really do. I wish this was a real game. Lastly, probably like, I wouldn't say my favorite thing that's different, but something that was cool itself is the goal of all life is death. So the spell that he cast in order to, I guess, essentially beat Shalltear was made from a special class called Eclipse, and the only way to get that class is the only reason why Ainz had this class is because he wasn't fixated on power. He wanted to make a character like that had an unorthodox build, and that's the only reason why. The requirements were to have 5 levels in Overlord and a focus on necromancer type classes, as well as an overall level of 95. And I think the description itself fits Ainz as an Overlord best. It goes, only an Overlord who is truly dedicated to the pursuit of death may enter this class, which swallows up all life like an eclipse. Which, you know, I think is good. It's a very good description of the Overlord he becomes. And that is it for the recap, and that is it for the light novel. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope you watch the Season 2 one that I have coming out pretty soon. Thank you.